Hi guys, welcome to my channel. So this bubble skirt has been trending and it's been really creative. I've seen a lot of fashion designers that have used this to create a lot of structures to the hem of their gown. I've seen it on skirt. You can pair it with skirt and a top. So I've really seen it and it's very beautiful. So I thought to share how you can achieve this in the simplest way possible. As you can see in this video, this is me anyway. So I used it for the down part of my gown to just add structure to it. Just imagine there was no bubble skirt in this gown. It would just look basic. So it actually boosts the look of an outfit. So if this is what you want to learn, let's get right into the video. So this is the fabric and the materials that I'll be using. And I'll be making use of a white lining, sorry, because I wanted you people to see how it's being made. It's not like if I use red you won't see it, but I wanted something contrasting, a contrasting color. That is why I decided to use a white lining. Please do not use white lining in your own, please. For the sake of tutorial, that was why I used a white lining. So I went ahead to fold my fabric into four. Make sure that all of your edges are closed, just like mine. So the next thing I did was to divide my waist circumference. So my waist is 30 divided by 6.28 gave me 4.75. So because I wanted a gather effect around my waist, so I added extra inches to the waist, to my waist circumference. So instead of using 4.75, I decided to use 10 inches. So I went ahead right now to mark the 10 inches round, just the way you see me doing. For the length of my skirt, I used 20 inches. So I went ahead to mark it round, following my circumference. So when I was done with this, guys, I went ahead to cut it out. So after cutting it out, guys, I also cut out my waist circumference. So this was it, guys. When I was done cutting, then I opened it up and I divided it into two, just the way you see me doing. So after dividing it, guys, I set it aside and brought in my lining. So for my lining, I'll be using 180 degree for my lining piece. So remember, for my main fabric I used 360, while for my lining I'm using 180 degree. So this was me when I folded my 180 degree. To achieve your 180 degree, you divide your waist circumference by 3.14. So whatever I got, guys, I got 9.7. So I went ahead to mark my 9.7 for my waist circumference. So this was me just marking the 9.7. Then for the length of my lining, I used 16.5. So I minus 3.5 inches for my full length. Remember, I used 20 inches for my full length, while for my lining I'm using 16.5. You can use any amount you would, just depending on how long you want your bubble to be. But me, I wanted it to be a bit decent, so that was why I used I minus 3.5 inches for my 20 inches length. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So after I was done with this, guys, I went ahead to cut it out. This is my pattern. I went ahead to do this off the camera because I didn't want my tutorial to be too long. So this was when I was indicating my lines. If you're very conversant with my tutorial, you'll know that this is how I draft my basic body. So for this basic body, I'm going to be altering the neckline. Remember that this gown is like an off shoulder, but it just has a strip around the neck. I won't be using that for this pattern because I don't want those lines to show in my dress, the dark lines to show. So that's why I didn't use that. So I went ahead right now to fold my pattern paper into two so that I can concentrate on the front block. The next thing I did was to achieve my off shoulder. So I came down from my shoulder line by 6.5. So you can actually come down more, but I would advise that you do not come down more than 7 inches. 7 inches is the best for an off shoulder gown. depending on your height and your size. So on that line now, that will be our new chest line. I imputed my bust measurement and I connected it to the old bust measurement. So when I'm done with this, guys, I will come down from that new chest line by 0.75 and I'm going to connect it to the armhole curve. The reason for this is because I do not want my gown to be poking my armhole. There's this it makes me uncomfortable, so that's why I had to come down by 0.75. So from my waistline, I'm going to be coming down by 4 inches to achieve my back waist effect. So after I marked the 4 inches, guys, the next thing I did was to reconnect it using my curve ruler to the waistline, just the way you see me doing. So after connecting it, guys, I went ahead to add my allowances. I've not added my allowance yet, so for my allowance I'll be using 1 inch. So this was me marking out the 1 inch sewing allowance around my bodice. And then for the hemline, that's for the backs, I added 1/2 inch. So you also go ahead and add your 1/2 inch around your back's waistline. So when I'm done with this, I use my marker pen to make it more visible. I wanted using my pencil because my pencil is not actually showing, so I decided to use my marker pen so you will see what I did. So this was me connecting all of the points that I made. So after I was done with this, guys, I will go ahead and cut it out. So this was me cutting out. I'm going to set the pattern paper aside so that I can cut the center point. So guys, I went ahead to reshape or remark my bust dart line. So I used 1 inch for my bust dart, so I just reshaped it. So when I was done, I opened it up so that I could close it with my masking tape because I do not want any dart line in my dress. So this was when I was closing it up with a masking tape. So when I'm done with this, guys, I'm going to just go ahead and set it aside and bring in my back bodice. So this is my back bodice, so I'll go ahead right now and label. So my shoulder line, my chest line, and then my waistline. So I've also gone ahead to go inside to avoid zip bulge around the waistline. You can see I went in by 0.75 to avoid zipper bulge. So sometimes the zipper bulge will go in on the waistline. It's not usually enough. It does not really eliminate any zipper bulge. So from the waistline, I came up by 0.75 and then I connected it to the waistline. So I'm not longer using the initial waistline that I marked before. So now I will go to the shoulder and come down by 6.5 inches, just the way I did for the front for our off shoulder. And I'll also extend this line to the armhole line, and I will use my ruler to connect it into a straight line, just the way you see me doing. So from that line now, remember, is our new chest line, so I'm going to extend it from the old chest line to the new one. From the new chest line, I'm going to come down by 0.75, just the way I did for the front. Are you seeing, guys? Then I will go ahead and impute my allowance. For the allowance I use for the front, I actually use 1 inch. So for the back, I'll also use 1 inch for my sewing allowance. So after marking the sewing allowance there, I also went ahead to mark my joining allowance for the waistline. I use 1/2 inch, just the way I did for the front, and then I use my ruler to connect all of those points, just the way you see me doing. So after connecting it, guys, I extended my new armhole line. Then from this point I came down by 1.5 inch because I do not want my back to be straight, so I came down by 1.5, and then I connected it to the armhole line. So that will be our new armhole. So I went ahead to cut it out just the way you see me doing. So after cutting out, I indicated back zip, that's zipper allowance, so I won't forget. So I indicated it zipper allowance, and I also indicated back. I brought the front piece and I also indicated front. So when I was done with this, I brought in my fabric so that I could cut the back. So this is the fabric that I'll be using for the back, the leftover that I used to cut our flay. So I placed my pattern paper on it just like this, and then I added an allowance. First of all, I pinned down. I used my pin to hold both the pattern and the fabric together, so it's not going to be moving about. So after pinning down, the next thing I did was to add my zip allowance. You know, we've not added zip allowance, so I went ahead to add my zipper allowance. That was when I was done pinning. So this was me adding my zip allowance. So for the zip allowance, I used 1 inch. So I marked 1 inch for the zip allowance, and then for the upper part I marked 1/2 inch, just the way you see me doing. Then to the armhole too, I also marked 1/2 inch. The next thing I did was to cut out. So after cutting out, I made a notch around the zip allowance so that I won't make mistake. So I made a notch. That notch is like a guide, so you should do the same for your own. So I brought in a new fabric. Then I folded the fabric into 2, and I placed my front paper, that's my front pattern paper, on it, and I used my pin to hold it together with the fabric so it could stay put to the fabric. So when I was done with this, guys, the only allowance, you know, we've already added allowance, so I just added allowance at the upper part of our bodies. So after I was done adding the allowance, I went ahead to cut it out. So this was me cutting out. So after cutting out, guys, you know, the strip around the neck, so to achieve it, what you're going to do is, you remember that we removed 6.5 inches for the off shoulder, so you're going to calculate 6.5 inches plus 6.5 inches, that's 13 inches. Now you also calculate your neck, your round neck at the back, your back round neck. So for my back round neck, I got 7 inches. Whatever your back round neck is, use it. So I added the 7 inches to the 13 inches. That was how I was able to get the length of my strip. And then I added 0.75 for the sewing allowance. You can add 1 inch. The reason why I added 0.75 is because this fabric is stretchy. Sometimes you don't even really need to add any allowance. This fabric is stretchy, so you don't really need that. So this is all of my pattern, guys. Are you seeing? So I will go ahead and sew this strip. Before I sew the strip, I will cut facing for the front. So I folded my leftover fabric so I could cut out the facing. This dress is going to carry a facing. If you want to line in it, fine. If you want to use full lining, it's okay, but I use facing for mine. And I also went ahead to cut facing for the back. So I folded my leftover fabric into 2, just the way you see me doing, and then I placed my back pattern, or that's my back fabric, on it, and then I went ahead to cut it out, just the way you see me doing. So after cutting it out, guys, I set it aside. For my flare part, I'll go to my sewing machine and run a stitch. So this is the fabric that will go around my neck. I've gone ahead to sew it. So this was when I was done with my running stitch. So I'm just here drawing the gather for the skirt part. So after drawing the gather, I'll show you how it looks like. Then for the front, guys, the strip that will go around the neck, I'm going to attach it on the front, just the way you see me doing. So I'm placing it. I used a guide, that's I used my nipple to nipple as a guide in placing this strip. So I now use my facing to cover it. I'll go to my sewing machine and I will sew it down by 1/2 inch. So this was when I was done sewing, and I've also gone ahead to iron, and I've also sewn my back interface. Are you seeing? But I left a space around the zipper allowance because that's where my zip is going to pass through. I didn't sew that side. So this is the back and the front. So this is my skirt part. I'm done with the gather. Are you seeing? So I'll go ahead right now and bring in my lining. I also drew a little gather around the tip of my skirt. I did not draw gather on my waistline for the skirt because I'll be using the lining as a guide. My lining is my guide, so I didn't need to draw any gather around my waistline because I use my exact waist for the circumference of my lining. So I'll go ahead right now and sew it down. So this was when I was done sewing it with the lining and the main fabric. Are you seeing how full our skirt is? Are you seeing how full this down part is? So when I'm done with this, guys, I will go ahead and bring in the front part. So this is the front part, guys. I'll go ahead right now and take my shape. So I'll be opening the facing for the back and the facing for the front. Are you seeing how I opened it? So I'll go ahead and take my measurement. So whatever allowance that I use, that's the allowance I use to shape. I did the same thing for this other part. I opened up the facing because I want it to be like an inseam sewing around that area. So this was when I was done sewing. Next thing I did was to bring in my skirt part. Are you seeing? So guys, if you've gained value in my video so far, so do well to subscribe, like, share and comment on my video. So this was when I was attaching the skirt at the down part at my waistline, sorry. So I used my pin to hold both skirts and the upper bodies together. Then when I was done pinning, I went to the sewing machine, I sewed it, added my zip, and this is the final result. Are you seeing how beautiful this gown is? We have come to the end of today's tutorial. See you in my next one. Bye guys.